So I bought some new wheels for my car and I was really happy with the result. I just thought it looked really good on this car. But since I was looking too much on my car at that point, I was finding some other things that also needed to be upgraded. Especially the rear brake shields on this car after like, what is it, 16 years. They were just starting to rust away and crumble by their own weight, I guess. So I bought these shields here from Clocker. They got some phosphate coating on them, but they got some nicks in them from the shipping and also probably storage in the warehouse. So I painted them with this kind of heat paint. I don't really think that's necessary. Any paint should last, I guess, if it's not track driven, because these rotors, I think, are not getting too hot. I also bought XT rotors or extra line rotors with the grooves from Brembo. I really don't think this makes too much sense in the rear of my car, since this car uses solid discs. If you get the extra line from the front, I think they got improved cooling because of some internal designs in the dual disc, and also they say at least it weighs less in the marketing material. Who knows, but I just bought them for the looks mainly. And as we can see here, it was just looking really badly and it was just falling apart on its own. So when removing the brake shields, you also need to take out the wheel bearing. So I actually bought a new wheel bearing as well, because I didn't really want to mount back the old one. So SKF, Svensk Kullagerfabrik, it's either OEM or better than OEM. At least they are the leading wheel bearing manufacturer in the world. So I guess they also supply some quality car parts. And I think also Saab have SKF wheel bearings from the factory. So to start this, we need to remove the rear disc screw retainer screw here. As we can see, it was not on there too hard on my car. Many people will probably need to drill this out, but since I've changed this one earlier, the discs earlier, I haven't tightened up this screw too much, and also put some anti-seize on it, and also using like a high quality phosphate coated screw with an Torx also helps, making it harder for the screw to slip if you need to put some more force to it compared to the Allen or Phillips screws. Then we removed the brake caliper hardware and also the glide bolts in the back with the Allen key style on a wrench. Then we removed the caliper, and then we also need to remove the caliper bracket holder thing with the two Torx screws, as we see in those holes there on the right. There are two bolts. And then we also need to lower the rear control arm. It's held in by one bolt and screw with normal one. And you also need like a jack to compress the spring. So when you untighten it, and then you use the jack to lower it. And when mounting everything back together, you also need to use the same jack to push the spring up and compress it to get the bolt in again to mount everything back together. And then we need to take Torx screw off from the rear swaybar end link. And I also bought a new end bar link at the same time, because it just makes sense, because these are very cheap, and since we are back here, it makes sense just changing it for a new one at this time. Then I just use an extension on this Ryobi Torx impact gun, and I could get all of those bolts off. Some of the bolts, or I had to hold it a little bit off an angle, because it wasn't really too easy to get in there, because it's a little bit of limited space. But with the extension and such, I was able to get everything back out, or get everything out, those bolts, and also tightening everything back up together. Worst case, you maybe have to loosen some other parts to gain more access, but I didn't have to do that. And when tightening everything back up, I think, not quote me on this, but it's 90 Newton meters for those bolts plus 45 degrees. And then all of the other things you just tighten up as regular and mount everything the opposite way as you disassemble it. And yeah, that's how I changed the wheel bearing. It's a little bit mix of a tutorial and how I do things. I'm not a car mechanic, so I can't mainly explain what I do. So yeah, it gives you maybe some kind of guidance if the job is hard and how you should do it, and or maybe you should just place your car into a garage and get some other people to do the job instead.